Terrifier 4 is in the works, and when Terrifier 3 first dropped, we got a bunch of updates on it. Now the clowny well has dried up. I think most recently, writer, director, and creator of this series, Damien Leone, appeared on Inside of You with Michael Rosenbaum. He talked about some of his favorite horror movies.
Jaws is my favorite film of all time, if I had to pick one.
Cool, I agree, Damien, but I want to know what's going on in that thick, bald head of yours. What little we do know about Terrifier 4 will be covered in today's big compilation video. So now let's go through a few updates and theories that we've gotten since Terrifier 3's release. Now let's get into it. Against all odds, Terrifier 3 obliterated the box office this past weekend. The unrated slasher made over $18 million last weekend. That is way more than what Terrifier 2 grossed in the entirety of its theatrical run. With indie horrors like this film and Longlegs conjuring up a shocking amount of success, it seems as if we may be entering a new era for horror films. Amongst all of this excitement is talk of a fourth, maybe even a fifth Terrifier film that apparently Damien Leone already has ideas for. More brutal ways for Art the Clown to end lives, and of course, expand this mysterious story. In today's video, let's break down what we know so far about the future of the Terrifier franchise, as well as a juicy theory regarding the final showdown between Sienna Shaw and Art the Clown. Now let's get into it. Hey everybody, I'm KillJoy Jake, and instead of having friends, I have horror movies. Before we start theorizing on where the recently confirmed Terrifier 4 will take us, we have to really break down the third film's success. Over its opening weekend, Terrifier 3 collected $18.3 million from over 2,500 theaters. It's unheard of for an unrated slasher flick to hit that many theaters during its opening weekend. The pandemic seems to have had a lasting effect on theater chains, but it may have just opened the door to new opportunities for extreme horror flicks like this. This performance is especially exceptional considering that Arthur Claus faced off against Arthur Fleck at the box office this time around. Joker 2, having been made for almost 100 times the reported budget of Terrifier 3, barely reeled in $7 million from almost double the amount of theaters. The Joker sequel has only generated $51.6 million domestically, with a worldwide total of 165. It's nearly impossible at this point for Joker 2 to break even with $450 million. Ouch. That's certainly a killing joke, alright. It gets even nuttier for Terrifier 3 due to the long weekend. Happy belated Indigenous Peoples Day, everybody. With many schools, colleges, and banks closed on the holiday, it seems as if Terrifier 3's gross is already up to 20 to 21 million as the Carnival Conqueror acquired another 2 to 2.5 million on Monday. And I'm sure that total is even higher now. This video is going up the following Friday. I'm hoping this success continues, although Smile 2 will surely divert some of the horror crowd in its second weekend. One thing is for sure though, there's gonna be a lot of smiling horror villains in theaters this week. Christian protesters were spotted outside a theater in Kansas stating they protest the Satanic Santa Terrifier 3 movie showing here. This is eerily similar to the same protesters in 1984, exactly 40 years before Terrifier 3's release, that were hoping to shut down screenings of Silent Night Deadly Night. That franchise went on to have 4 bizarre sequels and a remake. As actor Devon Sawa put it, a sure sign a movie is probably really good is if there's people protesting outside the theater it's playing at. I couldn't agree more, Devin. I couldn't agree more. Terrifier 3's success is a big deal since theater chains treated its admission similar to an R-rated movie. It's even reported by THR that kids bought tickets for The Wild Robot and ended up sneaking into Terrifier 3. Oh, bless their hearts. I remember when I was in middle school and we had to sneak some of our younger buddies into Insidious. Those were the days. As the Terrifier fanbase snowballs with the success of the latest entry, fans have one big question on their minds. What's next? Franchise creator Damien Leone confirmed at the premiere of Terrifier 3, held at this year's Fantastic Fest, that yes, there will be a Terrifier 4. Damien also took to Twitter recently to say there is no definitive answer at this time regarding how many more films I will make before concluding the Terrifier saga. Personally, I can't see it going further than 1 or 2 more films, but only time will tell. Rest assured, the ending will be epic and terrifying. He doubles down on all of this in a recent interview with Variety, assuring us that more is to come. He also adds that he may end up doing 2 shorter films in the 90-minute range to conclude the series so he can add in all the different set pieces he wants to throw Art the Clown at. It almost sounds like he's pitching a Deathly Hallows 2-parter finale. I could get into that. That's basically one 3-hour Terrifier film. Whatever happens next, I'm pretty sure of 2 things. They're definitely gonna get more money and hopefully more time for the next one, and the fans are gonna show up when the next film or films drop. Before I go any further, I do want to throw out a very quick spoiler warning. Seriously, if you have not not seen Terrifier 3 yet, you might want to skip the rest of this video. Let's just say that there's a reason a fourth film has to be made at this point. Terrifier 3 ends with a massive cliffhanger of hellacious proportions. Sienna's cousin Gabby gets dragged into a clown cafe portal, taking Sienna's one defense against the murderous mime away from her in the act. With Sienna's life in ruins and the sword dragged down into what I think is hell, Art and Vicky certainly have the upper hand here. Terrifier 3 was nowhere near as triumphant as the sequel. Now that we're all caught up to speed though, let's start theorizing on the franchise's most burning questions. For instance, how far into the future will Terrifier 4 take us? Will it take place on another holiday? Will we see more ghosts of dead characters from past films? Will Sienna ever pass the f***ing rice? And finally, will we ever have a clear answer as to who or what Art the Clown really is? Well, let's get into some of my Terrifier 4 and 5 theories. The two Terrifier sequels pick up where the previous film leaves off. Terrifier 2 begins with Art finishing off the mortician from the original, while Terrifier 3's extended opening resolves the sequel's birthing sequence. I think Terrifier 4 will do the same. After Art escapes via window at the end of the previous film, he hops on a bus with two other passengers, the driver and a lady reading the Ninth Circle. The driver is notably played by Terrifier producer Phil Falcone, and the lady's book seems to be foreshadowing what's to come next for the series. The Ninth Circle is something that has always been a part of the Terrifier franchise, going all the way back to Damien Leone's short film that was also featured in All Hallows Eve. Art the Clown has always had connections to the underworld. Art will once again take a note from his old pal Leatherface and rip these characters to shreds at the beginning of the next movie. I think Leatherface might have him beat on bus massacres though. That was the best scene of the 2022 Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Let's see Damien outdo that. The real question about this scene is, where will Art go to heal his wounds? The same house from the previous flick, maybe the Terrifier attraction from part 2, maybe a new Art the Clown hideout that we've yet to see. Following this theme of picking up right where we left off, I think the film will also return to Sienna's aunt and uncle's house. I guess they're dead now, so the house would technically go to Gabby, but then again, she's also in hell. Maybe it's just the cities now. Sienna will likely start off the fourth film by looking for another clown cafe portal. She might also be evading the police at the beginning of this flick, considering a few things that were dropped in Terrifier 3. We learned via the podcast sequence that some folks blame Sienna Shaw for the murders of Terrifier 2. That doesn't seem to be Sienna's biggest problem though, because it sounds like she's gotta go to hell to save Gabby. Something I've been thinking about is I wonder if she can open the clown cafe portal at the Terrifier attraction again. I also think this film will bleed into New Year's Eve for its next holiday, considering this saga storytelling. Each movie feels like the next chapter of one big epic. I think this works especially if Terrifier 4 ends up being about Sienna having to go to hell to save her cousin. New Year's is a holiday focused on celebrating a new era for oneself. It's a reflection of what came before while holding new resolutions for what's to come. I imagine Sienna will be dealing with a lot of that before entering the Ninth Circle, but on a much more traumatizing scale. Willingly going to hell to save the last of your surviving family sounds terrifying. The ebb and flow of the sequel could follow Sienna through the different layers of hell, call it Damien's Inferno. While the plot moves with Sienna, Art could independently continue his massacre on Earth. Look, let's be real, it's a Terrifier film at the end of the day. I want to see Art the Clown killing people. There's gotta be some goofy semantics and a big showcase kill. It's basically what we've done with Art in these last two movies, minus a big showdown at the end of the flick. If part 4 is about Sienna going to hell, rescuing Gabby, and potentially killing the entity once and for all, that could set up a more grounded fifth and final entry. With Art's guardian demon gone, he becomes mortal again. He's still a merciless serial killer, meaning he's still a threat, but if Sienna chops his head off this time, then he's gone for good. Terrifier 5 could go back to basics and be a simple slasher movie again after a much more ambitious concept is explored in the fourth film. The only thing that's really different is you have your final girl hunting down your slasher villain. I think this would be totally full circle and would appease both sides of the Terrifier fandom. Those of us who want to see this mysterious story resolve, and for those of us who are just showing up for the gore. I also think doing this fifth film that way gives a chance to really examine Art the Clown for the last time. We got a taste of his backstory in part 3, I think, where the demolition team discusses how the house in which he and Vicky hide out at once belonged to a serial killer. Back in the 90s, he apparently buried a bunch of children in the basement. Flashbacks show us Art the Clown's time in the 90s, where he maybe started off as a simple birthday clown that developed a taste for blood. This would be a really cool way to send off the Jolly Jester by going back to what made that first movie so special in its simplicity. Along the way, I'm sure we'll run into more familiar faces from the past, like how we already have. Brooke, the character from the sequel, was featured briefly in Terrifier 3 for a scene that has really resonated with people. This clear homage to An American Werewolf in London ended up being a cool callback, but hasn't affected the story. yet. If Sienna just gives her the damn rice, maybe she'll go away. Seriously though, I think this could be setting up a bigger spectral presence in Terrifier 4, where the ghosts of Art the Clown's previous victims help Sienna take down the entity. Think something similar to the ending of The Black Phone, where the ghost kids end up beating up the grabber. This would also be an effective way to show some fan favorite characters again, like Catherine Corcoran's Dawn and Jenna Cannell's Tara. These two especially need some sort of redemption after Art the Clown did them so dirty. I'd especially love to see Jonathan Shaw on screen again in one of these flicks. A character that some believe is still alive after his shocking off-screen death in the last movie. Sure, that skull in the cage could have been Juliet's from the beginning, but how did Vicky and Art get his glasses? I think the little man is dead, and the only reason his death was off-screen ties right into Damien's most recent comments about where the line is. Speaking with Variety, the writer-director says, "I'm always looking for lines to get up to push the boundary. Maybe just step right over it, but you can absolutely fall into a level of extreme distaste that I'm trying not to do." I think Damien knew this would be an emotional death on or off screen, and whether you have a problem with the scene or not, there is a clear intention for doing it this way. First off, Jonathan is just a kid, at least in the eyes of most Terrifier fans. In Terrifier 2, we literally watched him grow up during dinner, considering they filmed some of these scenes months and months apart. I don't think Damien would want to kill this character on screen, especially based on that last comment. Also, Jonathan's death was used as a fake out to make you think it was Gabby's head in that rat cage. This makes Sienna's aunt's death even more brutal, having her think that her daughter has been viciously murdered. It does suck that we didn't get to see more of Jonathan Shaw in this entry, however. I'd love to see Jonathan come back like as a bloody red-skulled ghost with the glasses on. He could guide Sienna through hell, think Virgil to Dante. It would be sweet to see him come back for such a bizarre new take on that same character. Whatever happens next in Terrifier 4, it's clear that it's going to take some bigger and more ambitious swings. I'm expecting this next one to be Damien's Army of Darkness, as the series becomes more grandiose, blasphemous, and totally epic. There were many questions us Terrifier fans had after watching Terrifier 2, like who is that creepy little clown girl and how is Art the Clown still alive after getting his head chopped off? Another one was, who is Sienna's mysterious father?
Is that Daddy's sketchbook? Jonathan, answer me. You know how long we've been looking for this.
Now, after meeting the Shaw Patriarch in Terrifier 3, we finally have some answers. Like, for instance, he's Michael Emerson from The Lost Boys. The point being, Terrifier 2 left some mysterious breadcrumbs for the sequel to deal with. Now, not only did Terrifier 3 answer some of those questions, it also posed some new ones that I think the fourth film will try to answer. I think Terrifier 3 may have even given us a hint as to how Terrifier 4 is going to end. Now let's get into this spooky little Art the Clown theory. Hey everybody, I'm KillJoy Jake, and instead of having friends, I have horror movies. Terrifier 3 is widely considered to be the best film in Damien Leone's splatterfest carnival of a slasher franchise. It has some of the most vicious showcase kills and silliest moments from old Arthur Claus.
I'm wearing the outfit, right? So it's just like Elvis. He gets the full Santa experience.
It also features some new characters, and for today's video, I want to focus in a little bit on Gabby Shaw. Gabby is Sienna's cousin, specifically from her mom's side. Her Aunt Jess is her mother and Barbara's sister. Gabby's introduction in Terrifier 3 tells us even more about her and Sienna's wholesome past. Which, yes, I can't even believe I'm describing something in the Terrifier universe as wholesome, but oh my god, every scene with these two, besides obviously the ending, is really sweet. When Sienna gets to her new home with her extended family, she is immediately greeted by a very excited Gabby. Gabby takes her to her new room that's all decorated and filled with art. And no, not the clown. Art the Clown would decorate their walls later on with Uncle Greg, though. Really puts you in the Christmas spirit. Who's going to see this movie for the re-release on Christmas Eve or Christmas with their families, by the way? Please leave me something about it in the comments below. That cracks me up. The art in question here is specifically a large mural of a tree. This makes me think there could be some kind of significance here with Sienna's family tree. After all, her father is a big part of this third film. We'll talk more about Sienna's family in a future video. I do think it's strange that Victoria would say later on in this film that it's no wonder that they picked you, meaning there's something significant about Sienna. Maybe we just don't know what that is yet. Could be in that pesky diary that Gabby read, though. Getting back on track here, Gabby mentions in her Christmas card to Sienna that she's her sister from another mister, once again putting a focus on the father character who shows up a little later in the film, as well as a final crucial line in that card, which today's theory is going to be all about. In postscript, which is what PS stands for, not plus more like I've thought for many years now, Gabby writes, "We never made it to the moon." There's a drawing of a rocket ship there too, which they apparently built out of cardboard at some point in the past. Man, Gabby, I just don't think cardboard is going to save you from the vacuum of space. Jeez, these characters are so dumb. Gabby better not be looking for an internship at NASA, that's all I'm saying. Seriously though, this might be some subtle foreshadowing for what's to come in the events of Terrifier 4. As we know from Terrifier 3, that film left us on a horrendous cliffhanger where Gabby gets sucked into a clown cafe portal that likely leads to hell. Based on the demon we saw earlier welding Sienna's angel armor, I think there are multiple clues from the third film leading us to the netherworld. Gabby also takes Sienna's sword down to hell with her, meaning the only hope for our heroes at this point is to save Gabby. Did I say heroes? I guess I should just say Sienna because I think everyone else died in this movie. Fingers crossed we get Jonathan back in part 4 though. Maybe Sienna's plan to rescue Gabby from the entity, or the devil, is to build some sort of rocket ship to escape hell. Now, like we just talked about, a cardboard rocket ship isn't gonna do much for you in the vacuum of space, neither in the fiery pits of hell. I think if you were to set down a cardboard rocket ship in hell, it would just light right up, setting it on the brimstone and all that. I don't think that's gonna work, Gabby. These plans are not very good. But what if our characters were to simply get propelled from hell back to the real world? Sienna and Gabby could have this really heartfelt moment right beforehand where maybe Sienna grabs her hand and says something like, "We're going to the moon, Gabby. We're getting out of here." Just thinking about that, I got a single tear running down my face. Maybe instead of a cardboard rocket ship, though, they're being aided by some of the characters who have fallen in the past to the hands of Art the Clown. Another breadcrumb left in Terrifier 3 was a strange appearance from Brooke. Now, Brooke is very dead, as she got sprayed in the face with a bunch of acid and her heart was taken out of her chest and bitten into by Art the Clown at one point. It was kind of awesome, but she is definitely dead, alongside her dickless boyfriend Jeff. She comes back in Terrifier 3 briefly as an American Werewolf in London-style ghost. To this day, she's still asking Sienna to pass that damn rice. Although Brooke seems kind of pissed at Sienna for dying in the previous film, sort of blaming Sienna too, do we think that all of the ghosts would feel this way about her? Just like how Victoria said, what if these ghosts were to find out that Sienna is this chosen one, prophesized to take down this entity? If I were Tara or Dawn from the first movie, I would want to help this chick out. Art the Clown cut her life short and cut into other things as well. I think if these ghosts, maybe trapped in hell, found out that Sienna was their best shot at stopping this demonic mime, they would do anything to help her, like use some soul power or some bullshit to help her get out of hell with her cousin and with the sword. I'm not sure how they're going to do a scene quite like this unless they use some kind of crazy CGI, VFX, whatever, but I think they'll definitely end the next film with our characters ascending as opposed to the descending finale of the third film. At the end of Terrifier 3, Art the Clown gets away, Uncle Greg and Aunt Jess are dead, and Gabby gets sucked into freaking hell, man. Where Terrifier 2's ending feels so triumphant like the good guys won, Terrifier 3 feels almost like the opposite. Despite that super victorious moment that Sienna has chopping off Victoria's head, that's kind of the end of the triumph there. Terrifier 4 will likely show us some sort of upswing for Sienna after all of the awful she's been through. Saving Gabby and retrieving the sword would be a really good way to do that. The best part about that too is it's not the end of the story. Art the Clown and the entity are not dead in that scenario. There's still more story to be told if Damien Leone still wants to go through with that plan of doing maybe 2 more movies, but also maybe just 1 more. Anything is possible in the world of Terrifier right now, which is why it's the most exciting franchise to talk about. Now, this does beg one gigantic question, because the movie that I'm pitching to you right now does not sound like a Terrifier film. Where the hell is Art the Clown in this scenario? Like, is he gonna go to hell somehow to fight Sienna? He doesn't seem like the most motivated guy. He's kind of just doing whatever kind of chaos he can create anywhere he wants to go. I think you could make a Terrifier film where your A plot is exactly what I've just described, Sienna going down to hell to save Gabby, where your B plot is Art the Clown causing aimless chaos back on Earth. But that might feel directionless at a certain point. I mean, even the Santa scene in Terrifier 3 pushes the plot a lot. Art gets the Santa costume, therefore he goes to the mall to blow up all those kids in a unique disguise. Because of the mall explosion, Sienna freaks out in the third act, which gets Uncle Greg to go pick up the kid later on. So basically, if Art the Clown never stole that Santa costume from the guy at the bar, Jonathan would still be alive. Or maybe he's still alive. We don't know. We don't know that yet. Fingers crossed, baby. The point being here, Art's madness needs to affect the main storyline, otherwise why are we watching? I mean, of course, besides the fact that it's super fun to watch. So if Terrifier 4 is taking us to the underworld, how will Art the Clown get there? Are the cops finally gonna catch up with him and give him a lethal injection? God, that would be the most disappointing ending for this character ever. He's a murderous cartoon character who you can't even kill by chopping his head off. Will a lethal injection even work on Art the Clown? This is maybe bringing up more questions than answers, I think. I guess we'll just have to see when that 4th film drops.
A I'm wearing the outfit, right? So it's just like Elvis. He gets the full Santa experience if he wants.
Terrifier 3 showed us that Art the Clown does not exclusively conduct his murder sprees on Halloween, like we've seen in the past. The third entry in the Splatter franchise saw Art awaken during the Christmas season, and he's even a big fan of Santa Claus.
Santa's coming to town! Santa! Oh my God!
Now there have recently been a few updates on the confirmed fourth installment that makes me think the next entry in Art the Clown's demonic tirade may take place on yet another holiday. So without further ado, let's get into the holiday madness and talk about which holiday Terrifier 4 should be set on. Hey everybody, I'm KillJoy Jake, and instead of having friends, I have horror movies. Terrifier 3 was recently announced to be dropping on the streaming service Screambox, with a rather interesting post on Instagram. The post featured an edited picture of Art the Clown wearing heart-shaped glasses and holding a bouquet of roses. It came with the announcement that Terrifier 3 would release on Screambox this Valentine's Day, keeping the holiday theme from this franchise consistent even down to the streaming release date. Now that's dedication. It definitely feels as if the Terrifier franchise is going to keep this holiday installation a big thing with each new entry. Personally, I don't really see it as a gimmick considering all of the other different slashers in the past that have done something similar. In a weird sort of way, it's kind of like standing on the shoulders of giants and paying homage to what came before. So for today's video, I want to go through a bunch of different holidays and talk about which one I think Terrifier 4, and maybe even Terrifier 5, should be set on. Obviously, this franchise has already covered Christmas and Halloween multiple times, pretty much going all the way back to the slasher's genesis. One of the next big holidays after that, though, is of course New Year's Eve/Day. Terrifier 3 left us on a bit of a cliffhanger, with Gabby being dragged into the Clown Cafe, which might just be hell, and Art the Clown escaping via a window. Art the Clown continues his masquerade this time, opposed to getting executed and then resurrecting, for a promise of more chaos in the future like the previous two entries. That leaves the door open for Terrifier 4 to start right where we left off again, just like how Terrifiers 2 and 3 did. Terrifier 4 could conclude the story that started in Terrifier 3 once the ball drops in New York. Art the Clown could kill someone with a champagne bottle and wear those cute little glasses that have the new year on it. I mean, come on, that writes itself. Valentine's Day, however, fits the theme of Terrifier maybe even a little better. Not only does that streaming post allude to a Valentine's Day setting for the next entry, but according to a poll I just put out on Terrifier 4, the majority of you want to see Valentine's Day as the setting for the next film. Also, crazy idea for a massacre here. What if Art the Clown strangles somebody with some thorny roses? You could see it like cutting into the neck and blood just starts squirting out. I mean, that would be sick. Valentine's Day is a Christian holiday, just like Christmas, that honors Saint Valentine of Rome, a Christian martyr. Terrifier 2 and especially Terrifier 3 have a ton of religious symbolism in there connecting Art the Clown with the occult. Is Art the Clown working for Satan? The answer may surprise you. I wouldn't be shocked if we kept that element of the franchise limited to Christian holidays only for that specific reason. Maybe if Damien does do 2 more Terrifier movies like he's hinted at in the past, we could see Art the Clown shooting heart-shaped arrows into the chests of lovers for Terrifier 4, and then Terrifier 5 features the clown in a bunny suit nibbling on some children's necks. Both Christian holidays that Mr. Clown here can absolutely ruin. Speaking of Christian holidays though, we have to talk about St. Patrick's Day, because there's a lot of opportunity for shenanigans there. Technically a Christian holiday as well, St. Patrick's Day celebrates the Irish patron and is also a break from Lent, where Christians are encouraged to restrict themselves from certain material possessions, such as their favorite food, for 40 days. This is why the bars, and jail cells admittedly, are pretty packed during that day. This is an interesting setting for a slasher film especially, considering how many drunk people are just wandering the streets. As a writer, you'd have a very easy excuse for why someone just wanders off from the group and maybe gets hacked into little bits by Art the Clown. With this specific holiday playing an integral role in Lent, you could also have Sienna's arc in Terrifier 4 get into something similar. Sienna is the lowest she has ever been at the end of Terrifier 3 and will likely be looking for a way to save her cousin Gabby from the pits of hell. I just did a video recently detailing Sienna and Gabby's escape from hell that I think has already been hinted at to us in Terrifier 3. Make sure to check that one out if you missed it. Then there's Easter, which I am almost 100% sure will be the holiday setting for the final entry, whether that's Terrifier 4 or Terrifier 5. Easter specifically celebrates the resurrection of Christ following the 3 days after his crucifixion. Like I said earlier, Art the Clown running around with bunny ears on would be hilarious, but this holiday also lends itself to a bigger story centered around Sienna. Without getting too blasphemous here, I could see Sienna spending 3 days roaming around hell looking for Gabby, and then saving her in Terrifier 4, that would then lead into a big story in Terrifier 5, being all about hunting down Art the Clown, taking him out once and for all. That way, the plot still pushes forward while Art the Clown's chaos here on Earth continues to ensue. I could vibe with that. Some goofy stuff here, some thematic stuff over there. And also, we might see Art the Clown use a carrot as a weapon again. I can't believe that may happen twice in this same franchise. It's almost like John Wick with the pencil. While I'm pretty dead set on one of those aforementioned holidays being the setting of Terrifiers 4 and/or 5, there are a few others that happen later on in the year that could make for some insane sight gags with horror's favorite clown. On 4th of July, Art the Clown could dress up like Uncle Sam and shoot fireworks at a family. Maybe on Labor Day, he could demolish a construction site, or even take a note from John Carver and stuff someone into an oven on Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving as a holiday to me is a really interesting one, considering that Eli Roth's trailer for Grindhouse, which was titled Thanksgiving, finally got a feature-length adaptation just a few years ago. As much as I would love to see Art the Clown find a way to kill somebody with a turkey baster, I just feel like John Carver has this holiday dominated right now. Maybe one day, but right now I just feel like it would be stepping on some toes, considering the sequel to Thanksgiving is supposed to drop later on this year. Trust me, there are other holidays, I would even go so far as to say better holidays, that Art the Clown can cause chaos upon. While all of these options sound really appealing to me, I'm almost 100% sure that whatever the holiday focus will be of the next film, it will certainly be something religious focused, considering an increase in theological parallels in the last couple movies. I gotta be honest, it is a little weird talking about religion so much in slasher update videos, but it is without a doubt one of the biggest things about the Terrifier franchise to talk about now, love it or hate it. I feel like it's Damien's way of fleshing out Art the Clown as a character. Giving him a demonic backstory also feels a lot like old school 70s horror, which is clearly a huge inspiration for this franchise. I'm excited to see where it goes next. I just hope they don't focus too much on the religious stuff. Keep it as a thematic format for your archetypal characters to fall into. We don't need a Deus Ex Machina ending where God comes down and smites Art the Clown for being bad, because that would suck. Damien Leone, the writer, director, and creator of the Terrifier franchise, has just dropped a very exciting update on the upcoming 4th installment. Without further ado, let's get into it. Hey everybody, I'm KillJoy Jake, and instead of having friends, I have horror movies. Fresh off the incredible success of Terrifier 3, nearly $90 million at the box office, highest grossing unrated movie of all time, that is awesome. Damien Leone has just shared with us a big update on the 4th movie. On his birthday. We should be giving this guy presents, and he's giving us a bunch of stuff. How generous. I'm so excited. The post included a picture of the cover page of the Terrifier 4 script. Posting to Instagram, Damien Leone said, "Thank you all so much for the amazing birthday wishes. I'm truly blessed to know so many wonderful human beings. I might as well take advantage of this day and give all of the Terrifier fans a little present in return. The script for Terrifier 4 is underway, and it is shaping up to be the most epic, horrifying, thrilling, emotional, and satisfying conclusion to the Terrifier saga. I've personally never been so excited to see one of my own scripts translate to the screen like this one. P.S. I will finally reveal Art's origin in this entry. Thank you all again." Wow, there is a lot to talk about, all in that one little post. So first and foremost, Damien here has confirmed that yes, the script is currently underway. That does not mean it's finished, however. Considering that it's the top of 2025 when this video is being recorded and put out, I imagine the earliest we'll see Terrifier 4 is sometime around October of 2026. I can't see it coming out any earlier than that. But of course, the big thing here, like kind of a bittersweet, I guess, update to the Terrifier franchise is that Damien has confirmed here that this will be the conclusion to the franchise itself. An utterly satisfying conclusion in Damien's words, however. I called this bittersweet because in an interview a little while ago, Damien said that he was kind of tinkering with the idea of doing maybe 2 more movies, 1 or 2, if we're getting specific. But it seems like a Terrifier 5 is just not in the works. We're probably going to get Terrifier 4, that's going to wrap it up, and that's going to be it. And last but not least from this post, he also talks about revealing Art's origin in the final chapter, which I think is very fitting. One of the things that has kept me coming along for each new sequel is learning more about Art the Clown with each new entry. Even now, after a bunch of short films, an anthology movie, and 3 solo movies that have focused on Art the Clown for the most part across all those things, we still don't have a very clear answer as to who or what the f that guy is. In Terrifier 3, though, we did kind of learn something about Art the Clown, where two of the demolition workers who are going to take down the house where Art the Clown is currently residing talk about how a serial killer used to live there back in the 90s. The guy specifically says that he buried a bunch of children in the basement, which is messed up as hell, and that might be some kind of chopped up origin story for Art the Clown. Maybe? I guess we'll learn more about that in Terrifier 4, however. As much as I love living in the mystery, it is good to know that we are going to finally get some answers here in the 4th installment. But then again, that does mean this has to be the last installment, because for me at least, one of the things that keeps me coming back is not just the super over-the-top gory kills, but also this crazy mystery that Damien has built here. You'd just be getting rid of that whole element if you just showed your hand and just kept this series going on and on and on forever, but I don't think that's going to be the case. Although I selfishly want 2 more Terrifier movies because I think that would be awesome, I totally understand wanting to wrap this up and move on to something else. Damien Leone is obviously a very big voice in horror right now after the success of Terrifier 2 and Terrifier 3. But a lot of fans want to see what else he can do, including myself. We know that he can have a sadistic murder clown run around kill people in really exciting ways in various different formats across all these movies, but now I'm excited to see what comes next from the guy. He's expressed interest in doing things outside of the realm of horror too, even talking about doing a gory action film at some point. And although it's been a couple of years, there was talks about him doing some sort of project with Ghost House Pictures, which is of course Sam Raimi's company. I'm really excited for Terrifier 4, but I think I'm even more excited to see what other kind of projects that Damien gets into sometime in the future here. Same goes with David Howard Thornton and Lauren Lavera as well. David Howard Thornton recently put out this short film of him playing the Joker, and there's been a lot of rumblings, people talking about wanting him to be the new DC's Joker. That would be so cool, even though I would be a little sad that we lose another great horror actor to the superhero realm. But dude, David would eat that role. Lauren Lavera has a bunch of other horror projects in the works as well, including a movie called The Fetus. You might be able to guess what that one's about though. Obviously, as of right now, there are no plot details, release dates, or, well, a whole lot of substance to Terrifier 4 at the moment. Damien Leone is literally working on that right now. But this is a very exciting and concrete update. It would be really cool to get this movie sometime next year. Could you imagine getting Scary Movie 6, Scream 7, and Terrifier 4 all in the same year? Oh my god, 2026 is gonna be good, man. I'm excited.
Please stop, please!
Buddy. Wouldn't it quit causing trouble?
Absolutely not, Ricky. This juicy jester has at least one more massacre in the works. It was recently announced by franchise creator Damien Leone that Terrifier 4 would be the final entry in the Art the Clown saga. So what's next for this sick clique? Today, let's talk about some of the exciting horror projects that the Terrifier gang has gotten themselves into lately. Hey everybody, I'm KillJoy Jake, and instead of having friends, I have horror movies. To kick off this side project update video, let's talk about our excellent leading lady here, Lauren Lavera. Lauren's first major film role before starring in Terrifier 2 was a body double part for Anya Taylor-Joy's character in 2016's Split. Lauren tells THR that the role came to her after an accidental encounter with director M. Night Shyamalan. Detailing this, she says, "One day M. Night passed me and we connected eyes. My mom was with me on set that day and she was like, 'Oh, that was weird. Did he recognize you?' And I was like, 'I've never met him before in my life.' And the day after, I got a call from the casting director asking me if I could double for Anya." Lauren is also in a 48-hour film project called Date, Click, Repeat, and if you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend it. Probably one of the better 48-hour films that I've seen. Lauren will likely return for Terrifier 4 to do battle with Art the Clown, probably for the final time. But before that, you'll be able to see her in a film releasing next month called The Fetus. The Fetus is described as an unplanned pregnancy forces a troubled couple to confront more than just their fractured relationship. It spawns a half-human, half-demonic fetus with an insatiable thirst for blood. As they struggle to keep it alive, buried traumas and fears of commitment resurface, pushing them to the brink. With their survival at stake, they face an impossible choice: nurture this monstrous creation or destroy it before it destroys them. It sounds like a modern response to 1974's It's Alive, and I'm all about that. If you've never seen that killer baby movie, you need to. Lauren is also working on her own horror project that's described as a Wild West slasher film. Not Not a ton of updates on that one lately, but let me tell you, this cowboy is certainly thirsty for more. The most exciting update on Lauren's career, however, is joining the cast of a new film from director Darren Lynn Bousman. Darren most notably helmed 4 of the 10 current Saw films, including 2 through 4, as well as Spiral from the Book of Saw, the latter there being severely underrated. It's better than Jigsaw. I'm going to die on this hill. This new movie, titled The Monster, however, stars Lauren Lavera and Jaimin Hansu from the A Quiet Place franchise. Hansu has to be one of the most underrated actors in Hollywood right now, bringing his all to countless performances. It's especially great to see him in another horror flick. The Monster follows 2 millennials who make quick money by leasing incredible New York City apartments they don't own to people who don't know they are being scammed. The con works brilliantly until they run into an apartment owner with a dark secret who flips the game on them. Sounds like these characters are gonna get some comeuppance. Sounds very interesting. Moving on to the writer-director of the Terrifier franchise, Damien Leone, who has a few interesting projects on the horizon. Damien has been very vocal on tackling the Friday the 13th franchise next at some point. He even tells Slash Films that Jason was always his favorite slasher since he was a kid, and he thinks that there's a way to approach it by keeping it in the 80s. Damien goes on to say, "I would have it take place in the early 80s. I would try and make him as scary as possible because I feel like that's something they kind of lost as the movies went along. You just start getting too comfortable with these villains and you need to be scared of them again." Leone even detailed a chat he had with the studio execs, saying, "Believe it or not, I've gotten to talk with some people who are execs who are in charge of that franchise. And I think I'm still a little too obscure on that Hollywood list of people that they would approach to direct the film." Well, after Terrifier 3 just made $90 million at the box office for an unrated horror film, something that has never happened before ever, I believe that has certainly changed. I'd personally love to see Damien's version of Jason, especially after this franchise was plagued with so many cuts of the gore because of the MPA, or formerly MPAA. No matter how many A's are in that name, they certainly hurt this franchise big time. Damien could definitely fix that and maybe even give Jason some of his nastiest kills in a 13th entry too. How cool would that be? Speaking with Deadline in late 2023, Leone also revealed that he has a project in the works with Ghost House Pictures, saying, "I've also had a movie in development with Ghost House Pictures, Sam Raimi's production company. They reached out to me after the success of Terrifier 2, and we've had a lot of meetings. And they have one of my original horror ideas in development that they really want to get off the ground. So that's been fun, a really fun collaborative process with that team. There are some other things. I might have the opportunity to write and direct one of my favorite exploitation films from the 80s. It's not a horror film, but it is an action sort of thriller revenge film from the 80s. That would be a dream come true." My biggest takeaway from this quote is I just really want to see Damien Leone do something else besides sadistic demon clowns. We know he can do that pretty well, but what else does this guy have up his sleeve? Next up is Michael Levy from Fuzz on the Lens Productions, one of the many production studios that work on the Terrifier films. Michael notably played Will the Exterminator in the first Terrifier. Art saws off his head. No way you forgot about that. Now Michael portrays Freddy in a really funny new parody video. Michael has even said that he would like for New Line to get a look at this video, as he would love to portray Mr. Krueger in some sort of new continuation. I think we can all agree that we certainly want more Freddy.
I just got a little hotter.
After this performance too, I think Michael is certainly a contender. I also have to note that Fuzz on the Lens Productions has a new movie coming out this year titled Screamboat. It's a horror slasher parody of Steamboat Willie that has recently fallen into the public domain, and it looks... well, let me play you a clip from the trailer.
Steamboat Willie.
Last but certainly not least is Art the Clown himself, David Howard Thornton. David portrays Steamboat Willie in that goofy-ass looking movie, but he also has a new short film out that really blew me away. Titled Joker's Wild, Thornton portrays the Batman villain in a similar way to Cesar Romero. Not without a touch of Art the Clown, however. After going on a super campy and over-the-top monologue, he literally rips out Robin's tongue.
I need to loosen up that little tongue of yours, ah!
It's probably one of the most brutal scenes I've seen in a YouTube short film. I do happen to know about another brutal horror short film called Chicken Man that you can even get merch for right now. I mean, just a thought. I really do love his performance, mixing the most brutal and campy elements of this character together into one horrifying amalgamation. That short film rocks, and I really hope that James Gunn has seen it. The Terrifier gang is certainly busy, and I cannot wait to see all of these projects come to fruition, or take these wonderful horror starlings to higher places. Just like that one Creed song, baby. Can you take me higher. Your boy will keep you updated on any forward progress there. There's no denying that these folks are certainly stars now, not just in the world of horror, but even beyond. As for Terrifier 4, the script is currently being written by Damien Leone, and I'm sure we'll be getting some sort of update in the coming months. For now, we'll just play the waiting game, and potentially even come up with some crazy theories. It's what I do best. Well, that was fun, wasn't it? Now let's wrap this video up with a review of Terrifier 3, the latest entry in this bloody slasher saga.
Who's this Santa?
That's Arthur Claus, actually, and he's giving out toys to children. See? Nothing bad happens in this scene. Absolutely nothing. Terrifier 3 is finally out in theaters, and I have a lot to say about it in today's review. This holiday slasher offers up new lore, the craziest deaths this franchise has ever seen, and an ending that will melt any horror fan's face. In today's deep dive, I want to answer questions that every Terrifier fan seemingly has. Did this film successfully top the bedroom scene with its gory moments, and does this story lend itself to more movies in the franchise? Now, without further ado, let's dissect Art the Clown's Christmas Massacre. Hey everybody, I'm KillJoy Jake, and instead of having friends, I have horror movies. The Terrifier franchise has snowballed from a viral short film in 2011 to a $35,000 feature that broke out on Netflix to a $250,000 sequel that pulled $15 million from an extended run in theaters to the present day, where a third entry made for nearly $5 million is breaking into the mainstream. Although Art the Clown usually rips people apart on Halloween, he's ambitiously throwing his hat into the ring of Christmas horrors this time around. The holiday element is so thoughtfully laced into nearly every sequence, sometimes it's even easy to miss. For example, a crucial sequence in the third act features one of the characters opening a present with broken wrists. By this part of the movie, you're almost sure they can't do more with the holiday concept, but it keeps going. Like a lot of the best sequences in this franchise. Speaking of which, Leone delivers on the gore. There are two sequences in this movie that are some of the sickest I have ever seen in a movie theater. I have never reeled back in disgust more in my life. While nothing goes on for as long as the bedroom scene in Terrifier 2, nearly every death is more brutal than what we've seen prior. Any of these scenes would be the best kill in another slasher franchise. For Terrifier, this is just another day of the week. The Tinsley team did an excellent job here with the practicals. The VFX team that includes KillJoy cult member Killjosh Petrino did an excellent job enhancing nearly every brutal shot of this monstrosity as well. Terrifier 3 features a sharper plotline than the previous two films, showing that Damien Leone is constantly improving as a writer. Spliced in between Art's madness is emotionally effective scenes with Sienna Shaw and her extended family. The whole movie is paced really well until an admittedly choppy second half that left more to be desired with the human story at hand. There's a specific scene I wish we had a chance to witness that's almost disrespectful to do off screen in my opinion. That's all I'm gonna say for now. The performances across the board are superb. Lauren Lavera brings so much more to the character of Sienna this time around by showing her struggle with her trauma. It's a major final girl trope at this point, but it never feels like Terrifier 3 is just going through the motions. Lauren puts her own spin on it, making it feel fresh, especially here in a franchise that is yet to deal with this sort of character arc. The previous final girls either got shot in the face 1,000 times or possessed by the entity. Speaking of which, Victoria Hayes, played by Samantha Scafidi, absolutely nailed this one. She didn't have a whole lot to do in the first Terrifier, which makes her chilling performance so surprising. With her Deadite-inspired voice, she carries a lot of the much-desired lore explanations throughout this threequel's runtime. I was shocked to see her have so much more of a crucial role in this film than I ever would have thought. The best part about Terrifier 3 is that while it does offer up a few answers to questions from the previous film, it presents new ones that are even more puzzling. This franchise is turning into the new Saw, where each new entry feels like the next chapter of a melodramatic soap opera. A soap opera that features gallons and gallons of blood, that is. I love what they're doing with the story though, expanding it in a way that doesn't lose what makes this series so compelling. That's about all I can say without spoiling anything, so we're gonna move into the spoiler section of this review now. Viewer beware, continue watching if you dare. Ooh. There's no better place to start with Terrifier 3 than its controversial opening. Just as I predicted, this film is non-linear, showing us a random bit of Art's massacre that somehow fits into the rest of this story. When Art had time to go after this family post having the Santa suit, I don't really know. I definitely have to give this one a second watch to see if there's any sort of nod towards that later on in the film. Maybe I missed it. Back in November of 2023, the internet erupted after the first Terrifier 3 teaser that featured Art the Clown in his big red suit, looking to plant an axe in a little girl's head. Some said that Terrifier 3 would be crossing a line if they had their fictional slasher go after a child. I think that crowd missed out on some of the most popular horror movies of all time. For example, It from 2017 opens with a child getting eaten by a space clown. Or what about about Jaws? You know, the first blockbuster ever that not even halfway through the film, Alex Kittner, poor little Alex Kittner, gets eaten by the shark in a fountain of blood. There are countless examples of this happening in horror films, not just the super popular ones either. Thankfully, while it is controversial, I think the opening scene was surprisingly tasteful. It's terribly upsetting to see the aftermath, a dismembered child's body parts scoured across blood-soaked sheets, but we never actually see it as it's happening. More proof that Terrifier will go right to that line but never fully cross it. This is important, I think, because at the end of the day, this franchise is about celebrating the slasher genre, shock value, and flat-out fun. You could lose some of those crucial elements if the scenario becomes too grim. More things I loved about this opening scene was the sound design. Art's axe swings into Jennifer's gut, arm, and head were so gnarly it made me want to vom in just the first couple of minutes. The visuals were crazy, but the sound design was so well done. It made me feel faux pain in the same areas as Jennifer. You really feel every impact as if it's happening to you. I also love that Juliet's fate is open-ended. It's scarier to let your mind wander there. What does Art do next after cutting the rest of Juliet's family into tiny pieces? After this, we cut back to the ending of Terrifier 2 at the Miles County Psychiatric Hospital, where Art's decapitated head is sucking the meat out of the nurse's neck, which in turn is being funneled into Victoria's mouth through what I think is an umbilical cord? How is this more f***ed up than the opening? Here we get our first lore update as Victoria says the entity is making her do this. It feels like a Deadite-style trick as she breaks character and goes after Burke. Throughout the film, the entity is able to give us a ton of info on its ultimate objective, which seems to be possessing Sienna. Although I missed the little pale girl here, I again have to praise Samantha Scaffidi's performance. I was worried Damien wanted to shoehorn this character in again just to have a through line to that original film, but her presence was paramount to making this extension of the story work. This scene ends with Vicky and Art's body ripping off different pieces of Chris Jericho's face. The jaw rip especially was outrageous. The film reintroduces us to Sienna Shaw, who just got out of a mental hospital. She apparently sees flashes of the dead from the previous film, even though we only get one scene of something like that with Brooke. This scene was really cool and called back to horror movies like American Werewolf in London, but the idea ultimately felt underdone, as it could have had more relevance to what was going on here in 3. It kind of felt like an unnecessary Marvel cameo appearance. I just wish these ghosts did something like aid Sienna in destroying Art the Clown. Maybe we'll revisit this in part 4 though. It could be one of those seeds Damien likes to plant in a previous film to expand upon in the future, just like how he did with T2 to the 3rd film. I really loved Sienna in this film though, dealing with one of the most ancient final girl sequel tropes of all time, but again in a very unique light. Trauma! No, not trauma. Get out of here, Toxie! Lauren Lavera's performance here is what really sells this, feeling like, hot take incoming, a more centered and controlled version of Laurie Strode from Halloween 2018. Sienna struggles to keep it together here, but she saves an outburst for the deserving Mia, who comes on way too strong. This works really well for me, showing a downward spiral for the character throughout the whole film. It feels perfectly paced with its human story that kept me engaged at every turn. This is without a doubt Lauren's best performance so far, even if the ending of this one feels more like Empire Strikes Back rather than A New Hope. It is nowhere near as triumphant as the ending of Terrifier 2, but God, I want Sienna to kick that clown's ass in the next entry so badly. Bring on part 4! We have to talk about David Howard Thornton as Art the Clown here. David brings that same silly energy from part 2 while finding a few menacing moments that call back to the original film. The scene where Art meets Santa at the bar I feel is a microcosm of this. Art gets so excited to see Santa that he rushes past 2 potential victims to sit on the guy's lap. I also want to note that these 2 girls at the bar strike a resemblance to Dawn and Tara from part 1. I'm not sure if that was intentional or not, but it certainly had me thinking about those 2. Anyways, this might be the funniest scene of the movie, where Art fanboys over Santa. I had tears streaming down my face, I was laughing so hard. After Clowny spits his whiskey in old St. Nick's face and pisses on him, Santa goes into
Rage mode.
Art whips out a Glock from his bag of tricks and shoots the barkeep in the neck. He also executes the ice cream man himself, Clint Howard. F's in the chat, everyone. This scene gets real mean-spirited as Art the Clown ties up Santa Claus, freezes his limbs with liquid nitrogen, and smashes his flesh into tiny glassy pieces. This scene in particular echoes a lot of what Damien Leone had said about the film prior to its release, feeling like a cross between the last 2 films. He succeeds in finding that terror from the original again here that made me feel uneasy in ways the sequel just doesn't. I do have one major issue with Terrifier 3 that had me scratching my head though. Jonathan Shaw is a beloved character from the sequel that got very little screen time here and an off-screen death. It felt very disrespectful to do that to this character, even though I've been predicting the guy's downfall since this movie went into production. Depriving us of an emotional death feels like a massive missed opportunity that was utilized instead as a fake out. Admittedly, that does feel very Terrifier and mean-spirited to put the glasses on the skull as a reveal, but this main character deserved an on-screen death. This really bummed me out. The back half of this movie feels really choppy too, as if there are missing scenes. I loved what we got to see here, but I think Terrifier 3 has the opposite problem of the sequel. It's way too short. This film lent itself to an even bigger story than part 2, and I think the narrative would have been aided by another 20 minutes. Why didn't we see Sienna dig up the sword at the Terrifier? And why didn't Uncle Greg or Jonathan get on-screen deaths? These were main players in this film. Should I just wait for answers in part 4? Probably. Maybe these are just more strings like how I was talking about earlier, where Leone is just waiting until the next film to give us answers. Considering that he did exactly that here in part 3, I'll hold my judgment until I see the next one. I'm gonna give the Terrifier team the benefit of the doubt. What if Jonathan is still alive? Speaking of which, we finally got to meet Sienna's father. Jason Patric does a great job in his limited role here, giving us a peek behind the curtain of the prophetic Terrifier lore. A lot of these scenes feel like they're setting up the next film, which again, I don't mind, but it has me hungry for more. We see the moment that her father gets the brain tumor that helps him warn Sienna of the danger to come, and what will ultimately kill him. The demon in what I assume is hell makes a new version of Sienna's armor. Considering how this film ends, Terrifier 4 will likely take us to the Ninth Circle, where Sienna has to put on a new version of the angel costume to defeat Satan, maybe? At the very least, Sienna's gotta save Gabby. There is also a deeper cut into Art the Clown's backstory. From the Demolition Dudes, we learned that a serial killer buried a bunch of kids in the basement of the house where Art the Clown resides back in the 90s. That's gotta be him, right? We also learned from Jonathan that demons can only break into our world through the presence of pure evil, Art the Clown. This lends itself to many fan theories that suggest Art was a normal serial killer that a demon latched onto. That explains his supernatural powers and aimless chaos. I mean, think about it. If a serial killer couldn't die, he would basically be Art the Clown. No real goal, just murder without consequence. Anyways, I really like the direction that the Terrifier franchise is headed. And it wouldn't be a review of a Terrifier film if I didn't talk about my favorite kills. This is surprisingly a complicated topic this time around for a few reasons. First of all, the question many of us have been asking for years now: does the shower sequence top the bedroom scene? For me, yes and no. Nothing in this movie goes on as long as Allie's death from part 2, so you don't have that painful dread of constantly cutting back to this person receiving the worst fate a human being could possibly suffer through. But the kills as a whole here are crazy impressive and would easily top the best moment from any other slasher movie. The shower scene, for instance, is glorious and very well thought out. We get a thematic death for Mia, who fangirled over Art the Clown earlier, and a vicious bifurcation for her boyfriend. It's so hard to watch, I needed a shower afterwards, and no, not one with chainsaw-wielding murder clowns. I also love the juxtaposition of the goofy Terrifier Christmas song playing in the background. Just like the bedroom scene, you reel back in terror at first, but then you can laugh at how ridiculous the sequence becomes. Instead of salt and bleach here, though, you get a hilarious overkill that has you laughing alongside Art. Maybe not so silently, however. My absolute favorite death of the movie has to be the glass tube with the rats. As some of you know who have been here since my Halloween Ends coverage, I'm a big fan of rats. I've seen something similar to this done in Sinister 2, but nothing matches the viciousness of Sienna's aunt's death. I don't even know what the worst part is. Smashing a glass tube down her throat with a hammer, heating the other end of it up so a rat crawls into her throat, or slitting her throat so the rats can crawl out. It's so creative, it might just top the pretzel kill from In a Violent Nature. It's a close call at the very least. Bravo, Damien. There's one more little note I have with Terrifier 3 that feels like a symptom of its popularity. It's so self-referential at times, I could see some fans walking away with the same criticisms they had back with Hellraiser 3. It turns its slasher into a self-aware icon that almost feels like Flanderization. I love when Art has some silly moments, but it feels a bit forced and kinda like mainstream horror to have the guy basically breaking the fourth wall here. When he pantomimes a response to Mia's comments that he's the most popular serial killer since Jack the Ripper, again, it's funny and obviously referring to Art's growth in popularity. But this feels like a bit I would have seen in Deadpool and Wolverine, not Terrifier 3. Maybe I'm nitpicking too much, but I just wasn't crazy about these scenes in the movie, outside of the hilarious marketing, of course. I'm happy that these movies are successful, but I think Terrifier has to stay indie to continue its increase in quality. If they forget where they came from, I'm terrified Art the Clown could become a mere caricature of himself in a future installment. It's certainly not a problem yet. I absolutely loved Terrifier 3, but while most things here were an improvement, I am starting to notice some cracks forming that have me worried for part 4. What the next entry needs to avoid becoming too mainstream feeling is a similar budget to this film and more time for Damien to cook. Let him cook! Terrifier 3 was made in a significantly shorter time period than part 2, which I think resulted in some of its small issues. Give Damien creative freedom to make a movie however long he needs it to be. Terrifier 3 clearly needed more to tell the full extent of its story, and I hope the next one can avoid this. The Terrifier series is solidified as my favorite slasher franchise after this sequel. It's not perfect throughout its 3-movie run, but what we have here is something special that hasn't been done before. I'm being a little tough on this third entry because part 2 was so impressive, but god, I had a great time with this one. In my opinion, Terrifier 2 is still my favorite slasher movie, and while the third film improves in performances, gore, and cinematography, I feel that its narrative gets a little choppy in the back half. I'm worried that art is becoming Flanderized, but that cliffhanger ending here has me on the edge of my seat waiting for more. I loved Terrifier 3, but I think 2 is still my favorite all things considered. Terrifier 3 gets a 9 out of 10 from me. This is a phenomenal, groundbreaking slasher film that showed us things other horror flicks would never dare touch. Although I have problems with it, the good heavily outweighs the bad, and I hope this series never dies. The horror genre needs a franchise like Terrifier to push boundaries and remind us that the offensive can be fun if we open our minds. When horror gets too safe, like how some would argue it has become lately, it loses the edge that makes this space so creatively freeing. Horror seems to be the final frontier for unmitigated creative expression, where other genre films these days can all feel like they're coming from the same factory. Films like Terrifier 3, The Substance, and Immaculate from just this year are wildly original and prove that horror movies are still not to be missed for those looking for something fresh.